Don't Breathe, 2016 horror film directed by Fede Alvarez. During its original run, I missed it, mistakenly taking it for a pretty shit horror flick. Then I began seeing the positive reviews accumulate over time, and I promised myself to check it out one day. And now's the perfect time because the sequel has just been released in theaters. The premise of this film is extremely simple. A trio of teenage burglars in Detroit rob houses for small-time scores. They get their sights on an old blind army vet who supposedly has a lot of money from a settlement after the death of his daughter. He also lives alone in a derelict house in an almost completely abandoned, rundown neighborhood. Perfect mark, or so it would seem, because reality is that the blind man has some secrets of his own. The first one being that he's quite capable of defending his home and even more ruthless in doing so. And I have to say, the movie is surprisingly good, and the reason for that is its execution. It is very adept at building and maintaining tension. It's extremely efficient at setting up the characters and the environment. In the initial scenes, cleverly drawing our attention through camera movements to objects and spots in the house that will become very relevant later on. In general, the first 30 minutes or so are fantastic because of how tightly they're shot and edited. It just seems like every shot and every minute serves the story. It also helps that when shit hits the fan, which happens very quickly, it remains quite realistic, at least for a time. The blind man is quickly established to be a ruthless killer, yes, and he's also certainly capable, but he's not like Daredevil. He doesn't have super senses, he's still blind, and he has to rely on the clumsiness of the burglars to hurt them in any meaningful way. The burglars themselves also have this interesting internal dynamic going for them, because there's always the dilemma of, do we try to get the police to the scene and save our lives, but we go to jail probably, or do we try to escape on our own and get all the money? There's this ongoing battle between fear and greed, which I think works pretty damn well. Really, the only complaint I would have is that the movie drags a little bit towards the end. I think there is a point where the blind man goes from realistically believable antagonist to this slasher film villain force of nature that just keeps on coming and cannot be stopped, which makes it slightly difficult to maintain, to suspend the disbelief towards the end. But having said that, for the most part, Don't Breathe is very solid, and even if it drops off just a little bit towards the end in the last act, I still enjoyed myself thoroughly. Good stuff.